Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, May 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just talked about some of the massive news and moves that are potentially coming in college football with the creation of the College Football Committee and a brand new CEO that will be put in place once the House settlement is officially settled. In this segment, we turn our attention to their big brother, the NFL. New rules are being voted on right now. The first of the owners' meetings of the offseason was kind of a murmur, kind of quiet. Now that they've had more time to think, rules are being passed. There are more consequences and more support for the ban of the Tush push, as well as some changes to playoff seeding. We'll talk about all that in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, May 20th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit of the potential rule changes in the NFL. And we're going to start off with the one that has already been passed. 32-0. The owners are now in favor of allowing players to represent the United States in the 2028 Olympics, not just the United States, but the entire world in the 2028 LA Olympics for flag football. And we're going to get into our next segment with a dream team of what that might look like, but let's just talk about if this is going to happen at all. Right now, the rule is going to be a 12-team roster for each Olympic team. In this situation, each team, each of the 32 NFL teams can send one single representative. That means no T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. That means no Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That means one player from each team to show up and represent their country. Now, there have been some ups and downs here. Will these players risk injury when they won't really go all out in the Pro Bowl to represent their country? And I think that answer is a yes. We're also projecting a couple years out, so it's hard to project who is going to be the perfect dream team in 2026 when 2 years from now, especially with how physical and how demanding on your body the sport of football is, the guys that are going to be eligible or going to participate in this will be younger, will be completely different, most likely, than the ones that we have in mind for the dream team right now. But outside of that, I think this is a really good idea. Getting these players in the Olympics, I think, is really cool. Not only is it going to give more recognition to the NFL as the NFL continues to try and grow its brand from outside just the United States. Obviously, they have those those games, I should say, being played in Brazil, those games being played in Ireland and the UK and Germany and all across the world now, or in Mexico as well. These are going to be huge marketing events for the NFL to get their players out there. There's also a chance that the NFL doesn't win, and that would be brutal on the world stage, because flag football is just fundamentally a different game, so it very much does depend on who gets sent there, but we'll get into that in our next topic, in our next segment here on the show. I just think that this is really cool that we're going to be able to get a gold medal in some kind of football if these players decide to participate, and that they are going to be allowed to decide to participate. There will undoubtedly be some hesitance, but there will undoubtedly also be players that want to show up for the country and want to represent the United States, or maybe even their home country if they are not from the United States, in the flag football at the 2028 LA Olympics. That's the one rule that's been passed so far. But there are a lot of discussions around some other potential rule changes here, and we're going to start off with what I think is the most controversial one. That one being the banning of the tush push. This has been something that's been floated around the NFL in circles for a very long time, but there is now official language from the Green Bay Packers to officially ban the tush push. And the reasoning they give for why this rule should be changed is player safety and pace of play. And we've been over this a bunch. There have been 0 injuries due to the tush push. The pace of play is not affected at all. It's not like it's too fast. It's definitely not like it's too slow. The only time it's ever been an issue is when the defense continually jumped off sides in the NFC Championship game with the Commanders and Frankie Louvu. That's the only time that this has ever really been an issue for pace of play. They're just throwing that in there to be more reasonable for more reasons why. Now, my biggest problem with this is not only the fact that they're banning a play because they can't stop it. This is a play that, as we've been over before, can only be done by the Eagles. And the Eagles can only do it this well because they have a very rare combination of the biggest, meanest offensive line in NFL history and a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds. Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that is fundamentally built different than just about every other quarterback in the NFL. That offensive line is built fundamentally different than just about every other offensive line in the NFL. That is an offensive line that is built to move bodies, and they are going to move bodies because that is what they do. They bought a bunch of bulldozers in to play offensive line, and then they use a guy that can squat 600 pounds behind him, and then they push him a little bit, right? We've seen other teams try this. We've seen quarterbacks try this that can't squat 600 pounds like Jalen Hurts can. It doesn't work as well. It simply doesn't. But teams can't stop the Eagles from doing it. And the Eagles just won a Super Bowl, not necessarily off the strength of the tush push, but that was definitely a reason why they were so unstoppable, especially in those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations when you can just go back to back and back and back to it, even if they were stopped the first time. This is something that is not unstoppable. We've seen teams stop it or slow it down before, but it is something that is gaining a lot of momentum. Some powerful people are rumored to be in support of banning the tush push, including allegedly Commissioner Roger Goodell is in support. Again, allegedly, he is in support of banning the tush push. There are some things that, again, I can understand. If you want to get the tush push out of the game, I'm not necessarily super against that. I don't think they should. I think it's something that 5 years from now, the Eagles even aren't going to be able to do. But what the Packers have proposed with their new wording is not only going to affect the tush push, it's going to affect a lot more as we get further down. The new rule proposal being in Section 12, in Rule 12, Section 1, Article 4, is said, no offensive player may push or pull a runner in any direction at any time or lift him to his feet. They cannot use interlocking interference by grasping a teammate or by using his hands or arms to encircle the body of a teammate in an effort to block an opponent, or push or throw his body against a teammate to aid him in an attempt to obstruct an opponent or to recover a loose ball, or assist the runner except by individually blocking opponents for him. The consequence of this would be a 10-yard penalty. Now, first of all, let's talk about the penalty before we get into the wording of this. 10 yards is way too much. This is not something that is worth a holding call. Holding calls end drives. This is basically a sack right here if you are to do this. I don't think this is something that's going to pop up too much. But the other thing with this wording, it says you cannot push, pull, or lift a teammate off of its feet at any time. And sure, that is the kind of broad wording you want in a rule so that you can't have this loophole where at the start of the play, they'll drop back for a little bit and then they'll do the tush push. So it's not just immediately off the snap. But what this also stops is the pushing of the runner down the field. The big scrums, when you have a running back that his momentum has basically been stopped, but he's still churning, and you have the big offensive linemen and the wide receivers just pushing the pile, and the defense trying to end the run. This is something that is going to be now a 10-yard penalty. You're just trying to get that extra yard in a 3rd and long situation. You get 1 yard away, and you are just one-on-one trying to battle against the defense. The offense now legally cannot help you, but the defense on the other side, they can gang up and they can go and tackle you. And that is something that I think is going to have large reaching effects on these downfield plays more than it is on the tush push. This would effectively end the tush push, but it's also going to end those pile pushes, the keep your legs churning and pick up a couple more yards kind of plays that shows the physicality of football. This is not a play that I think needs to be banned. This is a play that does not show any risk of injury. Again, 0 injuries to any player that has been a part of the tush push so far. I cannot get behind this rule change. It just doesn't make any sense to me, especially with the language that the Packers have put in. A couple rule changes outside of that one, though, that I do think should and will be passed. Firstly, an onside kick change. They've changed the onside kick recently in an attempt to make it better. They allow teams to run up. This is something that I think is going to be good. First of all, they're not only restricting it to the fourth quarter. Last season, when they changed the onside kick rules and the kickoff rules, they restricted onside kicks to when you're losing in the fourth quarter. Now you can do it just whenever, as long as you are losing. That is the first big change. The other thing is they're moving the kicker and everybody up 1 yard closer to where you need to be for onside kicks. That way, they have a higher chance of recovering it. The onside kick recovery is basically a 0% chance. It's less than 2% of those that are recovered. So giving the kicking team any kind of advantage, I think, would be huge. The other proposal out there that I don't think is going to get passed is the 4th and 15 situation, where I don't think there's a team in the league that can consistently get a 4th and 15. I think that's something that, while it might hurt this future of special teams, is something that I think is really going to help the percentage of onside kicks or onside plays, I guess I should say, that are successful in the NFL. If you're going to make a real change, I think that is the way that you have to do it. I do support this rule. I expect that one to be passed because that one doesn't really change too much. But the other big one that might change things is the NFL seeding. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but a new rule proposed by the Lions says that teams will be seeded based on their regular season record alone. These teams that sneak into the 4th seed with a 7-9 record and host a home playoff game, a team like the Vikings that finishes at 14-3 last season and has to go on the road to face the Rams instead of hosting a playoff game and being the number 2 seed, that is going to be done with. That is something that is going to change immediately, and I love that rule. I like the fact that you are going to be rewarding better regular season teams, with the caveat that this rule keeps division winning as an important part in automatic playoff berth. There is a world here where, based on this rule, we see people say, oh, the 7-9 team still made the playoffs. We should just get rid of division winners making the playoffs. But that changes the entirety of how the football schedule works. There is no point in playing your division 6 times in one season in a season that is 17 games long. You play your division more than a third of the time. If you don't get some kind of reward for being the best team in that quadruplet right there, you do not deserve. You do not deserve. If there's no reward for making the playoff for being the best team in your division, it just doesn't make sense to play that many games against your division. Just go down to 1 and play more teams outside of it. So as long as these teams continue to make the playoffs, as long as these teams continue to do what they need to do, as long as the seeding is reset after the regular season when playoff berths are already decided, I don't mind this rule at all. This one, I don't necessarily know if it will be passed. I actually doubt this one's going to be passed because football, much like a lot of other sports, is rooted in tradition. And even if the Lions want this, I doubt that it gets passed this season. Maybe a couple more tries down the road, we see something like this go into effect when there's a truly egregious kind of example of a team getting home field advantage going up against a team that should have gotten home field advantage instead. I just don't really think that one has the kind of support, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these rule changes do you think should be put into effect? Which of these rule changes would you put in? And if there was a rule that you would like voted on, what would it be? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to that dream team for the NFL flag football rosters. We're going to talk about who I think would be the best at each position: 5 on offense, 5 on defense, and 2 reserves. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.